I was fortunate enough to be able to spend 10 days of study in Jerusalem. I had a chance to learn from the Hartman faculty. I had a chance to gather with rabbinic colleagues and see some of our former Shinshinim and some old friends who have made Aliyah over the years. And it was restorative. Whenever I go to Israel, I feel that I'm home again. And when I come back to Toronto and to my own house in the neighborhood, I also feel that I am home again. And soon enough, there will be a homecoming here for you too at Holy Blossom Temple. This is the time of year when we think a lot about home and homelessness. Being in Jerusalem during the 3 weeks leading up to Tisha B'Av is always an intense time when we realize just how fortunate we are to live in this moment in Jewish history when we can live freely in the land of Israel, in the land of our ancestors. And all this movement, getting on a plane, it was just like magical. It felt like a fantasy, actually. And landing in a place where they're not really wearing masks and everything is open and healthy, more or less. It really felt like another world, another planet. But what I'd like to talk about tonight is about staying still. During this time of lockdown, these many months of being at home, I think many of us have developed a love-hate relationship with our home. We are grateful for the walls that keep us safe and for the ability to isolate. But there's also this sense of feeling trapped, that our freedom of movement has been taken away from us. And so I want to share with you an ancient image of one who stood still. I feel like I've been running a marathon for 1.5 years while sitting in that darn chair in my living room, in my dining room, my makeshift office. It's running, 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 as if getting nowhere fast. But here is a counter image of someone who just stood and absorbed the scene of chaos and scattering all around her. You might recognize these words from Yom Kippur Haftarah, the words of the prophet Jeremiah, who imagines when the destruction of the temple and Jerusalem falling and the scattering of the people into exile and the noise and the smells of the fire burning. And there was one who stood there at the crossroads and just stood still. Her name was Rachel, the patriarch Rachel Imenu, Rachel our mother. And Jeremiah imagines her standing there. A cry is heard in Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping. Rachel weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children who are gone. And so while everyone is in a chaotic movement, Rachel stands there at the crossroads. And she lifts up her prayer to God, and her prayer above all other prayers, it seems, was heard. And God said to Rachel then, I promise you that one day your children will be restored to this land, and they will return to this holy place, and I will be with them then, and I will be with them between now and then while they are in exile as well. So what have we learned these many months staying still? Whether sitting still in the desk chair in front of your laptop, or sitting still in your reading chair, or sitting still in front of the television, or sitting still on your back porch, wherever you have been sitting, what have you been absorbing the way Rachel did? What chaos on the outside have you been able to contain as if a vessel? I think one thing that we have learned is how to desire. Before the pandemic, most of us were in the privileged position when things that we desired could be found. If we were hungry, we could go to the grocery store, and there would be endless choices there on endless shelves, all accessible to us. Or we could go to any Toronto neighborhood and choose from countless restaurants, and we could order off of big menus, and it could be ours. Or before the pandemic, if we were bored, and I think we grew bored very easily before the pandemic, we could be entertained in endless number of ways. In this terrific city, we could have theaters, and we could go to concert halls and museums and the sports arenas. It was all ours. All we needed was the time, and we could carve it out and be there. All we needed was the time, and the table would be set for us. And so we did not experience desire very often. If we wanted to travel to see family over borders or to adventure to countries and landscapes far away, all we had to do was save up our shekels and book our ticket, and we could be there. The pandemic has taught us what it is to long for. The pandemic has taught us, yes, languishing, as the New York Times says, but the flip side of languishing, the positive side of languishing, is longing. We know now what it is to miss one another. We know now what it is to desire an experience, to long for something that is out of reach or out of touch. The pandemic has helped us to reevaluate what matters most, who matters most, what values are at our core, what stuff we never needed in the first place, and how to be a human being who prays. Because prayer is an expression of our deepest desires. Prayer is an expression of our longing. And Judaism is a religion of longing. We long for peace, we long for justice, we long for home, we long for restoration, we long for the Messianic age that is always just on the horizon. And Tisha B'Av is a time of deep longing, sometimes painful longing. So I'd like to conclude with a Russian folktale that is told about Tisha B'Av, about what it is to long for. It is said that during Napoleon's campaign against Russia, he passed through a small Jewish shtetl, and he expressed his desire to see what was inside that synagogue. By chance, it was the 9th of Av, when Jews mourn for the destruction of the temple and mourn for a return, long for a return to Eretz Yisrael. And what did Napoleon see? But the Jews were sitting on the floor of the synagogue in the dark with a few candles, and they were weeping as they prayed. And when it was explained to Napoleon that the weeping was for the temple in Jerusalem, he asked, when did that happen? 2,000 years ago, he was told. And upon hearing this, the emperor said, a people who knows how to remember its land for 2,000 years will certainly find its way to return. And so, according to this folktale, it was easy for an emperor to notice Jewish longing and the power of longing for, the power of prayerful desire, of desirous prayer that will bring us from here to there to find whatever it is that we seek. With that theme of longing for, we turn to page 139 and we rise to our feet and we offer up this Aleinu L'Shabeach prayer, which calls attention to our aspirations for a world restored and all humanity at peace.